we're just gonna start. I just want this to be authentic because this is an authentic conversation.
It's all happening.
All right, so hello, Practice Indy. I'm Shannon. This is our resident sex
Educator.
Mary Margaret.
Yeah.
We're talking about queefs today, y'all. So we're talking about queefing. I'd like to say the word queef a few times just so you can either turn this off or like giggle or like, you know, queef. Maybe you want to queef. I had a friend who could queef on command in high school. I won't name her right now, but if she, I'm going to send this to her because she knows.
She's a champion.
She knows who she is.
Yeah.
So what are some names of queefs? What are some queef names you've heard?
Let's see, lady fart, queen fart.
Queen fart's my favorite.
Yeah, I'm glad you're a favorite.
Yeah, I feel. Yeah.
I guess those are the only two I really heard.
Have you heard Vart?
No, but I love it.
Okay, so Vart reminds me of like a Klingon. My name is Vart. Yeah, that would be my name, Vart. And then I've heard Fanny Fart, which I'm like, I don't know that you understand the anatomy of.
But in Ireland, that's what you call.
Oh, your vagina.
Yeah.
Oh.
So don't like go to Ireland and talk about your fanny pack.
Or do.
It's confusing to them, yeah.
Or talk about it, but they're gonna wonder like, are you smuggling things?
Right. What's happening? Yeah.
Okay. So insert your word of choice, but we're gonna talk about queefs because when you invert, often, or really after I had my first child, any split leg pose ended up not well, and especially if my pelvis was tipped over my shoulders, I basically just queefed. It was just like a matter of time before I was gonna queef on you, around you, on me. Yeah, I queef on people sometimes. So Mary Margaret, let's talk about we're gonna talk about how maybe to mitigate it. We have 3 tips, but let's talk about first the anatomy of the queef.
Sure. Yeah.
Enlighten us.
Yeah. Well, we have a pelvis here. Yeah. Right. So we have a pelvis and a couple other fun props, but to kind of just help us think about like what's actually happening, right? So our reproductive systems, whichever one you have, doesn't matter. It's like the internet. It's a series of tubes, right? Okay. So no matter what, there's fallopian tubes. There's the vas deferens that carries sperm, and there's all different kinds of tubes. The vagina is also a tube, if you think about it, right? Right? I mean, like imagine it.
Yeah.
Think about it. Think about a vagina right now. Right, so it's a tube. So there's, the opening that goes to the outside of the body, and then it's a tube that goes into the body, and at the top of that tube, we think of it as being kind of a hard stop, but there's actually a small hole at the top as well. Do you know what that hole at the top is called, like inside?
Oh God, your cervix?
Yes!
Oh, like is that a baby?
Yeah, do you know what?
2. I had 2 of
You have 2.
I had 2.
You have 2 now.
Yeah. Oops. Sorry, Langston.
Do you know what the opening to the cervix is called? The tiny opening. It's the one that dilates. So that's what we're talking about when you hear people talk about like
dilation. Well, effacement is your cervix.
Do you know what the little tiny hole that actually is opening is called? It's called the os. It's just os. I think it's a Latin word.
Oh.
Yeah. Os. Yeah.
Os.
Yeah.
Os. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you learned something new.
Yeah. You're welcome. So that's what's opening when someone's dilating, giving childbirth, right?
Okay.
Okay, cool. So that usually stays, I think about it as like a fist, like if that's the opening, it stays really firmly closed most of the month. It will open up a little bit when someone's having their period, right, for fluid to leave as well, right? Okay. From the uterus, through the cervix, out the vagina, right? And obviously it's gonna open much more to have a baby pass through it. So for example, these are kind of hard to see, but this is like kind of what a cervix would look like normally, not normally, like when you're not having a baby or not menstruating, right? It's like very tightly closed, and then the uterus is behind it, okay?
Oh, okay.
So there's like a series of these, and then the largest opening would be the 10 centimeters that a baby's gonna pass through.
So just like a side note, these remind me of like, do you remember the 90s when we used to wear like,
of course
forearm covers?
Yeah.
Or do you ever wear these like on?
I don't, because this one's a little bit tricky. Yeah. I only have the 10 centimeter one.
Okay.
Yeah. So the cervix can go from this to this. Okay. So it's movable, it's pliable, it's flexible.
Got it.
Great. Cool. So that is up at the top of the vaginal canal. So there's the tube, that's the vagina coming from outside the body leading in. This is at the top of that, right? Okay. So between that opening and the cervix is just the vaginal canal, which is a tube. So that is where the queef is happening from. Vart. That's where the Vart is happening from. So if you imagine, here's your pelvis, and then the tube is coming up through here, right? So from the bottom in, coming up through here, it's about like 2 to 4 inches long and expands, obviously. For all the various reasons it needs to expand, you know what I'm saying?
Right, yep,
Great.
got it. Check.
Cool, great. So when something happens to like push air in a certain way or move air in a certain way, then that can create a vacuum, essentially, right? So sex can do that, pushing air in, right? I'm assuming childbirth, right? There's a lot happening down there, right? And then sometimes during somebody's period, they might experience that too, right? So when you're inverting and you're changing the direction, I mean, you're literally taking that and taking it the other way. So you can imagine there would be some shift in the air, and because if there's nothing inside the vaginal opening at that time, it's kind of like collapsed on in itself, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you flip it, air has a chance to get in there, and then we have the lovely Vart, queen fart, whatever you want to call it.
Fanny fart.
Fanny fart, yeah.
I really didn't know all of that. I'm actually mind blown. So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so so a couple of things to consider. One, I think like even I giggle during this conversation because it's like vaginas are funny because we don't talk about them. Okay, vaginas are funny and penises are funny because we don't talk about them. So I would say the first thing, consideration students, is just like laugh at it. And I know people will not come to a yoga studio because they've queefed in a class before.
Yeah.
And that, like, honestly, I have queef teaching and
very,
oh my, yeah, I've actually done it and
I came back, I bought a membership. I was like, sign me up for more of that.
Because, like, honestly, we have to normalize it. So
yeah.
and being honest, like, whenever it happens in class, I'm mortified, but it's like, well, shit. Like, I either have the choice to be incredibly embarrassed and, like, pretend that, like, the floor creaked, or just like, oh, that was my crotch, everybody get into it, and we're moving on. Because this week we're doing handstand, but that, you know, our studio, we do a pose every single week, and, you know, that's not true at every single studio, so you might be watching this somewhere else, hopefully learning from Mary Margaret's brilliance. And any inversion, split leg position, anytime the pelvis is going to be stacked higher than the shoulders, or we're moving that pelvis into a different shape, even like happy baby and tucking your tailbone, drawing your tailbone up higher than the rest of your spine, that's going to create the exact same vacuum. So the first thing is like just normalize it. You know, like we've made it so awkward that if people have a human response, which queen farts are normally all,
sure.
Then like everybody's like in shame mode. So first normalize it. Second, I've heard to take an exhale if you're going to be doing an inversion or split down dog, split leg down dog, or anything like that. Take an exhale, which kind of helps create some pressure, I would imagine, to counter that force. And I have done that myself, like handstanding and stuff, and that super works for me, but everybody's different. The third thing I would offer is if you know it's going to be embarrassing for you, it's going to be triggering for you, and you start to learn when about the time in your life that happens. For me, it's around my period, post-childbirth, if I don't give my body rest after having children, like I'm queefing everywhere. Like I'm just standing there queefing. I'm queefing looking you in the eye. So it's like, I just know that if that's going to cause me shame, I don't put myself in those situations. So that's like the last tip, because you can't live your life in fear of a queen fart. And I think like maybe a fourth bonus is just, let's start calling them queen farts. Like, yeah, you know, you get the privilege of like making sound. You could like put a kazoo in there and like, you know, make a lady band. So, so let's talk about queefs, baby. So if you have questions, you can comment. We check the comments on YouTube about once every 6 years. So please leave us a comment. We'll get back to you probably never. But start to know your body more, laugh, and receive queen farts. And Mary Margaret, anything else you want to share?
Yeah, I guess the only other thing I'll say is if you're watching this and you have a vagina and you're like, that's never happened to me, does that mean I'm broken? It doesn't. Like, we all have very different anatomy, or the way that your pelvis naturally is already tilted might have something to do with it, or what, all of the things could be affecting that. So also don't be upset if it's the other way and you're like, this never happened to me. Is something off, right? You're probably fine. Life's a rich tapestry.
You can still do things with a kazoo without, you'll just need someone else to do the percussion.
Right.
Or you could fart.
Yeah, there's another vacuum.
We'll do
On
that
the
video
side.
next week.
That's a
maybe.
different, yeah. I don't know if I have
A
a model for that.
Okay.
We'll make one, it's fine.
Well, we could use that one with, it kind of looked like a sphincter. Yeah, there it is. So, so thank you for listening and being real human beings, and namaste.